you dare glamour me, he growled, his violet eyes burning. That's a little quote from A Court of Thorns and Roses, a popular romantasy novel. What might surprise you is there's something controversial about this line. Any guesses? I'm sure you can tell from the title of this video. It's the dialogue tag. He growled. Sometimes I like to ask my audience on Instagram which tropes, devices and techniques they love and hate. He growled comes up every time I open a most hated survey about anything. Actually, the only thing that comes up more than he growled is the unexpected pregnancy trope. Sorry to throw a dictionary definition at you, but the Cambridge Dictionary defines growl as to make a low, rough sound, usually in anger. Side note, I really enjoyed that their related vocabulary section included the words to wit to woo and honk. Anyway, when we talk about a human growling, we're usually talking figuratively. By comparing their vocal tone to an animal's growl, the writer is trying to evoke certain qualities or emotions associated with growling. This could be aggression, irritation, or intensity, for example. He growled is used in fiction to describe a very specific type of sound. It's often used for a low, guttural, grumbly, and often menacing or aggressive tone. That's a lot of adjectives. He growled generally conveys a level of anger, frustration, or hostility. In cases like this, a character may not literally be growling like a dog, although they may. It's not usually so literal, but a lot of people seem to really hate he growled. A lot. I opened up a suggestions box on Instagram to see why people hate he growled so much, and I was absolutely flooded with responses. Thank you so much. While this is a sample of short responses that made me laugh, I did also get a lot of thoughtful, written out responses and DMs as well. I'm going to break those down into a numbered list because this is my first YouTube video and I think the algorithm likes numbered lists. 1. Overuse. While he growled is far from the most common dialogue tag out there, it's used a fair bit, especially in certain genres like fantasy, romantasy, and dark romance. I definitely don't think it's the most conspicuous dialogue tag out there, but it's noticeable. You're going to notice he growled more than he said, or she replied, or they sighed, which by the way is my crutch phrase. I wanted to show you how many times I used it in my first draft and Google Docs crashed. Well, some words are more noticeable than others. As a reader, words like said and replied can sort of become invisible. They're so normal and inconspicuous. If you use them 100 times, nobody's going to bat an eyelid. But if you use a word like maladroitly a handful of times across multiple novels... My theory is that part of why he growled is considered overused is just because it sticks out. It's not the craziest thing ever, but if you hate it, you might start seeing it everywhere. Or maybe it is just legitimately overused. I will admit I don't read dark romance, so I don't know, I'll just put that out there. 2. Fanfiction. This is a hard one for me because I don't want to come across like I'm insulting fanfic writers. I have a lot of respect for people who put novel-length stories on the internet for free. That said, fanfiction gets a lot of hate online, unfortunately also within the writing community. And a lot of respondents to my little survey said they hated he growled because it had fanfic vibes, or 2010s Wattpad vibes. A lot of fanfic is written without planning or editing. Not all, but plenty. So it often gets associated with a less refined style that relies heavily on stock phrases like chocolate orbs and she ran into a thick wall of muscle and he growled. A lot of fanfic and Wattpad writers are also fanfic and Wattpad readers, which can also contribute to the recycling of certain phrases. I actually have a blog post on fanfic writing style, which I'll link in the description below. It's an attempt to identify what people mean when they say a book has fanfic vibes. It's not anti-fanfic, don't worry. Like I say, I have a huge respect for fanfic writers. Also, different, let's say, eras of fanfiction come with different stock tropes. People who are used to a certain type of fanfic will always associate he growled with fanfiction. Nothing writers can really do about that, and I don't think it should put you off from using it. 3. Dog. Imagine a dog. Some of you might be imagining a Doberman, some a Corgi, some a Poodle. If you have a bulldog at home, you'd probably imagine a bulldog. If your best friend has a Chihuahua, you might imagine that. So when I say dog, one person will be imagining this and the other that. Very different. And the same applies for a lot of words, including growled. Some people associate the word growled with hot fairies. Other people associate growled with this. The thing is, you can add more specific language around he growled, but you can't really control the image that pops into people's heads when they read it. Some people are going to associate it with wolves, some people are going to associate it with their Bichon Frise. I'm sure they know what authors mean when they write he growled, but that first association is uncontrollable, which is fine in my opinion, but I can understand that it takes some readers out of a story when they're trying to imagine a threatening war general, but their mental library is sending them this. 4. Gender. You might be wondering why I kept saying he growled throughout this video. I was wondering the same. Whenever the topic of growled comes up, it's always preceded by he. Who is he? And why is he always growling? So you might be rolling your eyes now and saying, come on, does it really have to be that deep? Are people really calling he growled problematic? No, at least I'm not saying that. There's a jailed Pomeranian on the screen, it's not that type of video. So, a lot of fiction, like the world we live in, is subject to certain norms and biases. A lot of books have strong, gruff, menacing men and soft, sweet, dainty little women, which is super valid things to be, but of course it does match up with a lot of traditional roles. Some readers, like the comments I'm showing on screen now, associate the growly bookman with traits like over-possessiveness and machoism. So some readers don't like he growled because it reminds them of a certain type of gender dynamic that they're just sick of seeing in books. Fair enough. Again, you can't choose what type of dog you think of when someone says, imagine a dog. Some readers are always going to associate he growled with alpha males. I get it. I don't mind seeing gruff male characters personally, and I'd love to see more grizzled female characters too. Like, actually grizzled, not even in a hot way. I guess this is a tangent, but I want to see more awful women in fiction. Not even in a hot, feminine, lipstick, high heels way, just like gross, messy women, please. For me, personally. I mean, please comment your book recommendations below, I would love to read that. So, there were actually a couple of other reasons I didn't get to for why readers hate he growled. But you can head to my blog at schoolofplot.com if you want to read those. For the sake of keeping this video brief, we're sticking with those 4. But now it's time to defend he growled. Get your gloves on in the comments, I'm ready. So, the reason I'm personally fine with he growled is because it's just figurative language, you know. It makes the description more vivid. Not everything that's written down is meant to be taken literally. You can use figurative language to add a bit of character and dimension to your writing. Seasoning. For example, imagine I said, just as her name left my mouth, the bell rang. Without waiting for a reply, she walked into the room in a creepy, devious way because she's a slimy girl. I think I could convey this sentiment a lot more efficiently if I just bundled all these words up into slithered. You can use this language to highlight that a character is snake-like. She has the characteristics of a snake. When you hear it, are you imagining a character crawling on her belly like a little snake, or are you imagining her walking into the room in a devious, creepy way? It could be either. I can't tell you what to think, but this is another example of figurative writing. It's efficient and evocative. By using growled, writers draw a comparison between the character's tone of voice and the sound that a growling animal makes. A deep, menacing tone. Growling characters are usually just speaking, not snarling and snapping on all fours with their gums out, but the use of growled encourages readers to imagine not just the words being spoken, but the tone, the mood, the vibe. It's a bit more efficient than saying, "He exclaimed in a grumbly, slightly aggressive tone." Side note, I do hate exclaimed. Controversial opinion maybe, but I feel like the exclamation mark does the job just fine, and you don't really need to add that they exclaimed after it. Comment your thoughts. So, I don't mind he growled. Lots of people do. What does that mean for writers? What action should we take? What should we do? Whatever we like. I don't think a single person is going to close a book and give you a 1-star review on Goodreads just because you did or didn't use he growled. Lots of beloved books use it, lots don't. You won't please everyone. You can't. At some point, you've got to write for yourself and for the people who like similar things to you. If you try to please everyone, you'll please no one. There are so many niches out there to fill, and if you just focus on writing something good, you don't need to stress about the stuff that really just comes down to personal preference. I would, however, caution you against using he growled too much. What's too much? I mean, it's really dependent on your target demographic. I think some types of readers would have more of a tolerance towards it. Dark romance readers come to mind. It's something you're going to have to ballpark for yourself. Go into your doc, hit Ctrl F and type in he growled. If you wince, take some out. That's my advice anyway. So, thanks so much for listening to my first YouTube video. How did I do? I would really appreciate some feedback in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, then please do me a favour and subscribe. I think there's also a bell. I'm not very good at this yet. Check me out on Insta and Pinterest and all those other things that I'll link below. Thank you so much. Bye bye.